Welcome, everybody, to the first meeting of 2025. So it was kind of exciting, I think, to me, and maybe other people too, about starting fresh in a new year. Um, we certainly ended up on a bright note for me, anyways, in that we finally got out the 2023 anniversary issue. Everybody should have that now, and I hope you had a chance to look through it and maybe learn something about the history and PHSNE. There's a lot of work putting that together, but it's a nice historical record. I would strongly encourage you to go to the online sites too that are associated with that. A lot of good information in there too. Um, as far as the upcoming year, I'm also very looking forward to that. Dana's already lined up a couple of looks like going to be great talks. Our Photographica show is solidifying a bit. We have the date. It's the last weekend in April. I think it's the 26th. And we have a warehouse going strong, taking in donations, which we really appreciate. As you know, we use those donations, those cameras and such to keep the organization running. As you may know, none of our board members get paid. We don't get any grant money. So we do rely on donations and membership. So if you're not a member, I hope you will join. And I also hope you will consider maybe donating some cash. We could always use that. And I think with that, I'm going to hand it back to Dana to introduce our first speaker for the year. Dana?
Thanks, John. Hi, I'm Dana G. I'm the program coordinator for PHSNE. And before we start tonight's talk, just a few housekeeping things before I introduce our speaker. If everyone could please stay on mute. Crista has said that she welcomes questions during the presentation. So if you want to raise your hand by using that at the bottom of the screen, or you can, unmute yourself, whatever seems best. But, just be mindful of the flow of the talk because we do have about 45 minutes. And then we can take more questions at the end. So tonight's speaker is Crista Dix, the executive director of the Griffin Museum of Photography in Winchester. Before coming to the Griffin Museum in 2020, Ms. Dix spent 15 years operating her own photography gallery, Wall Space Creative, closing it in 2020 to make the move to New England and the Griffin. In addition to curating exhibitions and mentoring photographers, she has written essays about photography, been a member of panels and discussions on the craft, juried creative competitions, and has participated in major portfolio reviews across the country. And so with that, Crista, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. It's so great to be among friends and to see a group of new people as well. I hope you all have been to the Griffin. I know many of you have. I'm not always at the front desk, but a lot of times I am, and it's always nice to see familiar faces. So with the start of this conversation, let me pull up my screen here and get started. So the context of this conversation was to be about contemporary trends in photography. One of the things that I really would appreciate is so many of you are photographers or are creatives. I would love to hear from you as well as we go through this talk, to talk about the things that you're seeing as well. So with that, a little bit more about me. I had a really circuitous route to get where I'm at. This is just a few of the things that I've done in my lifetime. When I was working as a camera salesperson, I was in Seattle at Glazer's Camera Supply. I don't know if you all have been out there or been there. It was the largest pro house north of San Francisco for many years. I think it still is. And my very first day at the camera store, I met a number of really important photographers that were coming through to do photo shoots and go out into the woods of uh, the Northwest. And I realized that as a photographer, I was never going to make it, but I did love photography and I loved supporting artists. So that day is when I decided to open up my own gallery called Wall Space, which I ran for 15 years. One of the things that I loved about it was my connection to my artists. We worked together to promote their work into collections and into museum exhibitions. And then my favorite part was creating a nonprofit-ish or a donor base called Life Support. And Life Support started with the earthquake in Haiti. We raised $10,000 using photographers' prints. We then did a massive campaign for Japan in, I believe that was 2011, 350 artists, over 1,000 prints, and we raised $85,000. So one of the things that's really important to me is that connection that I have to artists and to creativity and to photography and to really making sure that photography is seen all over the world. So, and as you can see, my little disclaimer down there in the bottom, I want to make it clear that these are my opinions only. I'm not a lawyer, an accountant, or an art historian. I am just a lover of the craft. So for those of you that don't know, the Griffin Museum's been around now for 33 years. We've had over 1,300 exhibitions. We've showcased 11,000 photographs, and we've shown almost 2,000 artists at our Winchester Museum. So for the past 30 years, we've invested in the craft of photography. My predecessor, Paula Tarnarelli, who many of you know, was, we called her the goddess of photography, or the grandmother of photography. She showed so many artists and did so much for emerging and mid-career artists and showing established works as well. This particular image that I'm showing is from an exhibition that we just had in January of last year called In the Room Where It Happened. One of the things that I have wanted to do is diversify the types of exhibitions that we show. This one in particular was documentary based. It was all of the chief White House photographers, and it was 60 years of presidential photography. And I think as we head into January 20th, a look at this again may not be such a bad idea to remember who we are and where we came from. Some of the artists that we've shown, I selected this group primarily because of the difference in craft, the ways that images are made, and the diversity of the voices that we've shown. It's almost impossible for me to list everyone that the Griffin has shown in their 33 years, but this was just a small sampling of something that was unique and different for me. I know many of you have, I know some of you have had exhibitions at the Griffin. How many? Is there a show of hands? Okay. Okay, so as we head into the future, one of the conversations that we were to have tonight is about diversity and diverse voices in the medium. One of the things that I am trying to do is have conversations about topics and communities and cultures that we haven't yet touched on at the Griffin. So our exhibition schedule right now, we have 3 themed exhibitions of note, bringing together multiple voices to talk about one subject. We also have a full education program and 2 members exhibitions. So if you're not a member of the Griffin, there's still plenty of time. Our next call for entry will be coming up in March. So the 2 images I'm showing here, Matthew Finley and Sung Gion are from exhibitions that are upcoming to the Griffin Museum. Matthew Finley in Impossibly Normal Life is part of our LGBTQIA exhibition called Nuclear Family. And Sung Gion is a part of a Korean photography show bringing Korean artists to the United States that we will have in April of 2025. So back to that diversity conversation. In the last 5 years since I've started, my goal has been to include a diversity of voices, not only in craft, but in location and also in community and culture. One of the things that we've been able to do at the Griffin Museum is create a fellowship for artists to come specifically to the museum and create site-specific installations, both inside and outside the museum. The Cummings Foundation was very generous in giving us a grant annually for 3 years to be able to bring artists from all over the world to the Griffin Museum to have conversations. Andre Ramos Woodard will be one of our artists that's coming this summer. His work is photography and cartooning. So he actually draws on top of his photographs. We will have a connection to our student program photosynthesis, where the students will work with Andre to create large banners that will be hung outside the museum. And then he'll have his work inside the museum in an installation of his own. So the question is, how do we find work? Although, where do we find these voices? I think that, I don't know about you, how do you find inspiration? Can anybody talk about where they look for new ideas or new photographs? How do you create something new? Oh, come on, please don't make me talk the whole time.
I'll join in.
Thanks.
Multiple formats of film cameras is what I have in my collection. So recently I was looking at the Yashica that I have and haven't used in a long time. And I just find it very interesting to think of different frames and the way that I see things now as opposed to the way I used to see things a while ago. Um, and I've been looking more towards portraits than the landscapes I used to take. I think I'm interested in connecting more with people, so I'm I'm looking for more subjects for portraits, folks that I know be willing to work on that with me. I don't know, anybody else? Oh, Drew says, I travel down back roads of coastal Maine and can find a lot.
Buildings
Yeah,
falling down, old farm buildings.
I'll
there's
chime
so
in,
much
Krista.
history in that wood, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah.
It's amazing what you can see. Eric.
Hi, Krista. Nice to see everyone here tonight. I think, personally, I get a lot of inspiration just from looking at the work that comes through our lab. A lot of people are doing all sorts of kind of work today. I try to get to as many places where I can look at work. Online, there's one thing, but, the Griffin has numerous exhibitions to get inspired by. The Leica store in Boston has done all sorts of things to open up space. They do print swaps now, which I think is, and you don't have to have a Leica camera to participate. It's the idea of getting together with fellow photographers and sharing ideas. And, my wife's podcast, Sibylla Smith's podcast, and all the people that she interviews, there are over 80 episodes on her podcast where she's interviewing artists about their creative process. So listening to people she's interviewed that I'm curious about and hearing about their creative process, I find it's all inspirational. So her podcast is called Concept Aware, and I really am amazed at the breadth of people that participate. And she's interviewed over over the years at her podcast. So those are all places I get inspiration, but getting out to openings and looking at work with other people instead of on a computer is by far the most engaging way for me to get inspired.
I'm not going to disagree, but I can't get on a plane every few minutes to go run around the country. I don't know. I mean, museums everywhere are bringing in new and interesting things. When we talk about contemporary photography, and I know there's two more hands up, and I'll get there, I promise. When we talk about contemporary work, we're really thinking about what's happening right now. I don't know that there's a big difference between what's past and what's present and what's future. I think that as we think about what's happening around us, that gives us the inspiration or certainly the drive to go out and find something new. So Becky, you had a question or a statement.
Yeah, the way I look at it is that I look for ways that my photography can be a tool for social change and advocate for social conditions in this country.
That's amazing. So what type of work do you do?
At this point, it's all immigrants and refugees. And the whole issue about immigration, asylum seekers, and how we're treating them and the impact on them and on our society.
Last year, we did an exhibition with 8 Latin American photographers called Traces of Existence. And it was all based in immigration and in family separation and in dislocation and exile. And then this year, we have Jill Enfield bringing her glass house to the museum. So there will be a physical object on our property, on our grounds. And the glass house is all about the immigrants of America. So that will, I'm trying to, when we think about contemporary photography, and there's so many different ways to quantify what that is, it's not just a two-dimensional object anymore. And I talk about it a little further on, that it's, moving image, or that it's assemblage, or that it's projections or banners, or there's so many tactile ways to incorporate photography into how we absorb all of this information. So Audrey, my national treasure, did you have something?
Oh, Krista, I love you. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm a very reactive photographer. So I do gain inspiration, like Eric said, from going to see shows and listening to podcasts, but mostly it is reading newspaper articles and becoming intrigued about something that somebody might not have done before, something going on in the neighborhood that's different. Then that's the way I react to things and want to get out and photograph new exploration.
One of the best things for me in this world are portfolio reviews and talking to artists, because you, as an artist, you're working all the time, you're seeing all the time. I get stuck in spreadsheets and in financial data, and as Tony Attardo can attest, I spend a lot of time with accountants, but I really love having those conversations with artists that come into the museum, or that I run into. If I see someone photographing something really unique or interesting, I often go have that conversation with them. I tend to be a little fearless. Now, my other problem, of course, is that my stomach is far bigger than my ability to actually showcase work. Because of our exhibition schedule, we don't necessarily have a lot of time for me to delve into every single idea that I think I have, but I'm programmed out till 2027 now, and I really hope that you all will enjoy what's ahead of us. And I know that that could possibly change. I mean, we're about to launch into 2025, and while I have this amazing schedule planned, looking at who we are Usually I spend the year thinking about, about who, what kind of work we want to show, what kind of conversations we want to have, all based in contemporary work. And I know that I need to pay homage to the processes and people that came before, but I also think that we owe ourselves the ability to look at technology, at craft in new ways, and have these new conversations. So where I find my inspiration from is from my peer conversations. I mean, when we talk about contemporary work, the best thing in the world for me to do is pick up a phone and call a curator that I know and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, and do you have any ideas on this topic? And we all are in some ways thinking about the same things, but approaching it from different directions. So it's always good. And then I can grow from seeing new artists or hearing new ideas about how to approach the medium. Sadly, Instagram is also quite good at seeing new things. Now, I find it fascinating when I talk to students that don't know the canon, that don't know the art history, that aren't familiar with people, because all they do is spend their time on Instagram. So I'll say, who inspires you? And they'll name somebody on Instagram. I will have absolutely no idea who that person is. And I don't know who's worse for that, whether it's me for not keeping up or them for not having the background. It may be a little bit of both. So we had some more stuff in the chat as well. Poetry, words, beautiful. That's always really great for inspiration or for finding new ways of seeing. I think one of the aspects of contemporary work is the inclusion of text and images now. I think as we move forward, photo books, I mean, for a long time, and of course, Sib is the master of that, photo books. As photographers, it's almost impossible for you to find a gallery or to find an exhibition, but having a book gives your work to the masses. And I think that it's an interesting way to have these conversations without waiting 18 to 24 months before your series is complete and you've got the room on the walls and all of that. Large format show. Okay, we'll work on that. Any other ideas for inspiration? Oh, I think we're good. So Cara Romero is part of our Indigenous Cultures exhibition that we're having in September of this year. So I'm looking forward to that. Donna Garcia, many years ago, created an exhibition for us called Spirit. She's working with us again to create an Indigenous Cultures show, and we're looking at new and young Indigenous artists and how they see the world around them. Diversity in collections. One of the things that has always not surprised me, but still surprised me when I see those numbers, is the lack of diversity in museum collections. And I find that individual collectors, rather than institutions, are far more open to collecting work from whatever inspires them. I find that museum collections have a harder time trying to, right now they're essentially trying to catch up as well. So I know that we've spent the last few years, I've talked to many of my peers in how they collect, how they find new work. Muriel has been, this image here was part of our Traces of Existence exhibition. She was, her family was in El Salvador during the war and left. And then she went back on a residency, and the seismic images, the seismic graph pieces that you see here are from Salvadoran earthquakes on the day of an important date for the family. I just butchered that, but hopefully you all will forgive me. So I did a really quick dive to see what everybody else is showing. When you think about contemporary works, I've got the High Museum, the Portland Art Museum, LACMA, and the Wichita Art Museum. And as you can see, photo is right up front. So I know that institutions are trying to diversify their holdings with more photography. I know that it for a long time it has not been the vision of choice, but at the same time, the immediacy of a print, the immediacy of photography and video is certainly one way to connect to art. I often call it the gateway drug to creativity. Love photo. Any questions so far? Any other questions? Any comments? I feel like I'm rushing through this because, of course, I'm super nervous. But at the same time, want to make sure I answer everybody's questions. So another thing, I had been rereading what I wrote a while back about what this talk was going to be about. Mixing mediums. Wall space was based on the idea that the photograph was an element of a grander vision. So this is my wheelhouse of mixing different types of art together to create something unique, something different, to have a fuller vision. So while I love traditional photography, I have a 5x7 camera here in my apartment. I still love the idea of moving image. I love the idea of the art, the hand of the artist impacting the print. So you can see Carol Benetaz's work down there in the bottom right corner, her hand stitching over her family photographs, created a storyline of disassociation and trying desperately to remain connected somehow to her family. The image on top is Martha Wakefield. Martha took an image that she saw as she was driving, and then she drew as she was photographing. So the piece on the right is actually a drawing that sits alongside the image. And then bottom left there, the two puppet-like figures is Brian Bress. Brian is one of my all-time favorite video artists. His work is clever and humorous. Their videos are short-lived. They sit in these frames, and especially with the two here, they go back and forth with each other. So they actually have a conversation in between the two of them. And sometimes the movement is subtle, sometimes it's pretty overt, but it's not one of those things where you have to sit and watch. It just sort of happens around you. It's perfect for a dining room. Honestly, if I were going back to my gallery days, I'd be like, yeah, let's put that in there so that you could always feel like you're never alone. Assemblage, the idea of the object, photography is object. We had an exhibition last year called Ties That Bind, which included objectness, and I'll get to that here in a second. Does anyone have a favorite way of working with their objects or with their photographs? Drawing, painting, stitching?
I've been weaving mine.
Oh, like physically cutting and weaving?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh.
I've been weaving like cyanotype with other prints.
One of the artists that I hope to work with is Sarah Sense. We had her in a conversation about a year ago, and she talked about how she wove her photographs.
Mm.
I personally do not have the patience or the skill or the quiet in my head to be able to sit and make that weaving happen. That's got to be a really meditative experience for you.
It is. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Anybody else? There was a photographer that I used to represent. I haven't shown his work, and I'm not even sure where he is in France right now. But Camille Vonar was an artist who started with digital images, and he composited them, layered them, and then physically altered them with additional prints. And each piece was unique. So while it started from a series of film images that were then composited digitally, the output was a physical object that you could hold in your hand that you didn't have to put behind glass. It was they were so textural and so lovely, narrative in style, dreamlike almost. That I hope that he is moving on to new work. I should look him up. But when I think about this mixing the medium, he's also someone that comes to mind. So many of you, I'm sure, know Astrid. Astrid was part of our Ties That Bind exhibition. Astrid is a contemporary photographer doing contemporary work, but also hand stitching. So when you see the pieces over here and in the center of this photograph there, that texture, that hand of man shows up in those images, and they become one of a kind. While you can say it's an edition of 5, it isn't really. It's usually a one of one in a series of 5, because there's no way that each stitch is going to represent each time. So again, that's the way that the hand of man takes over. And then part of that Ties That Bind series, J.P. Terlizzi did a series of assemblage pieces, all using family photographs, and used objects that were important to him or that had intrinsic family value. And then he inserted his family back into those pieces so that they became an object as opposed to a two-dimensional piece on the wall. And then here we go. For those of you, I think this will be a conversation. At least I hope it will be. How many of you have, let's just say, something to say about AI? Let's get started there. Anybody?
You don't want to hear what I think.
Yeah, I do. Go right ahead.
I read nothing about that. I want nothing to do with it.
Why? I'm not
Because
going
it's
to try and change your mind. I'm just curious.
We don't need it.
Well, we don't need it on what level? On a creative level or on a
Yes.
human level?
Well, probably on both. I'm getting old, so I don't really concern myself with this new stuff.
Okay.
Document what is there, and that's it. No artwork at all. Just what's there.
So when we talk about documenting what's there, what's contemporary photography to you? I mean, if we're talking about contemporary photography, what is contemporary photography?
I don't think I'm involved with contemporary photography.
So what do you shoot?
I shoot for historic groups that are documenting old historic buildings,
Oh, it's right, the barns.
the barns, the buildings.
Yeah.
Buildings that are going to be torn down, and they want to document it before they tear it down. The Army Corps of Engineers, other different groups.
You know, Arthur Griffin spent all of his life documenting New England. And while the prints themselves may be vintage, I promise you that when my interns or young students come to look through the archive, they think that some of those images are just as contemporary today as they were back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So I think contemporary photography, I'm sure that I'm blowing this completely out of the water, but contemporary photography to me just means who we are today, what we're doing today, how we see the world, how we gather up our creativity to have new conversations. I'd like to believe that's how we all move forward, but I'm sure if I asked an art historian, they'd give me a few other things to say. So, anybody else have an opinion on AI?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
If it's posted or noted that it is AI, I'm fine with it. But I want to know that it's AI. If it's a photograph of someone living and it wasn't taken with a camera and lens and printed, I want to know that it was created by AI. That's my big thing. Because I think, and if you think about it, AI has been around for a really long time. When Photoshop came out, that was AI. Why are we, thinking it's all new? It's been out for decades. It's just a matter of now it's getting so realistic that you can't tell it from the real stuff.
Are you familiar with Tom Chambers' work at all?
No, not at all.
So Tom Chambers is a Virginia-based artist who, much like Maggie Taylor, much like Fran Foreman, composited images together. So he'd go out and he'd shoot an entire list of things, cement or people or goats or whatever it was. And then he'd go back into Photoshop, and he'd been using Photoshop since its inception and compositing those images together. I wouldn't necessarily call that AI. I mean, in some ways, like I mentioned here, it isn't text, but it is text generated, right? It's image generated. Like in a creative sense, AI is only giving you what you give it. The two images that I'm showing you here from Rashid Haq, his series Plausible Presidents. I don't know. I'm assuming you didn't make it over to see our show on AI called Artificial Intelligence. We had a number of artists that were either working with it or showing its shortcomings, as it were. And I'll talk a little bit about it because it's the one thing that I am obsessed by when it comes to AI and creativity. So Rashid Haq, I'll move forward here. Is a programmer and has been using AI in his day-to-day living. But when it came to creating these portraits of the presidents, he created one and he put it down on his kitchen table and showed it to his kids, and it was George Washington. And he said, "Do you know who this is?" And the kids were like, "Yeah, it's George Washington." But it never occurred to them that that photo didn't exist in real time, right? So he thought that that was a fascinating way to look at how we use AI, or how these images, as they were, can be made. So he spent 2.5 years building the algorithm just to create the framework for these digital images. Then he went into his studio and photographed his friends, his family, people in a studio setting. And then he combined those two. So he fed information about each of the presidents, he fed paintings of the presidents, and he fed the studio portraits all into this algorithm, and out came these digital images. And I found that completely fascinating. The realistic way that you look at these, and I put Abraham Lincoln up here. Abraham Lincoln was important because we have so many photographs of him to start with. The camera was around by then and taking lots of images, but we've never seen him in such detail. I mean, it looks as if he sat for a studio portrait with a digital camera here. But what I found about this as we move forward into the AI planet was the realistic nature of how this works. And what I thought also was fascinating is our complete ability to turn over our sense of normalcy to these images in a way that was terrifying to me. So I thought that I thought that his work in particular was fascinating. When we get to, again, that idea of it didn't really happen, here's Josh Azarella, who was also part of this exhibition. And as you notice, that's a pretty famous photograph that you're looking at, but it's missing something, right? It's missing the legitimate event that caused the photograph. That tank, without that tank there, it's just a guy standing in the middle of the road. Now, the interesting thing to me, and in my conversations with Josh, was the idea that he's creating these images to rewrite history, but then if you put them out on the internet, they become anybody's. And so he was watching all of these images be dispersed through 4chan and 8chan and conspiracy theorists who wanted to prove that the moon landing wasn't real, that this, and if you go to China, this event never even happened. The date doesn't exist on the calendar. There's nothing in any of their internet that would indicate that this was something that happened in Tiananmen Square. So what I thought was fascinating with Josh was his ability to rewrite history using AI, which is, again, terrifying to me.
There's
And
a
then,
couple comments in the chat. I just wanted to, while we're still on the AI subject, do you mind if
yeah,
okay.
please.
Jim Mathis just said that it's just one more tool. I restore damaged photographs, and AI is good for filling in holes or missing pieces. And I edit a local newsletter. See the comment here. I edit a local newsletter. I sometimes use generative AI for an illustration, but I use it as a drawing or a cartoon, so it's obvious that it's not a photo. And Joe Green, did
Hi,
you have
Joe.
some?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for this evening, Krista. It's always nice to hear your take on the world of art and photography. Just specifically on AI, I don't know if you guys allow me to share my screen or not. Share screen. Let me see if I can do it, because no, I'm not allowed to do it, I guess. Oh, because you're sharing already.
I am.
Well, what I was going to show you I was going to challenge you to look at two photographs, which is the kind of work I do commercially. And I was going to challenge you to tell me which one was AI, because it's so easy right now. There's lots of courses and teachers and applications out there. But all I did was find one free application website, and I typed in 5 or 6 words, and I got an image that is what's going to be taking the food out of at least my mouth going forward, because you can basically, it's like rubbing Aladdin's lamp. You can wish for anything, and what you get is indistinguishable from real photography, and it's not going away, and it's growing exponentially. It's been AI photography anyway has been likened to the invention of electricity. It's going to change the entire world. So get used to it.
Very
Well,
sad.
thank you for
Very
that,
sad.
Joe.
The end is near.
That's correct.
Now, let me be clear. I have nothing against film photography. I love straight photography. I love documentary photography. I love portraits and still lives. I mean, the whole way that we see is really an emotional tug on all of us, right? So when we look at an image, we get some type of feeling, of emotion, of something either resonates or something doesn't. I mean, there are plenty of times when you go into a museum or into a gallery space and you're looking at the work and you were so excited to see it, and then you look at it, you're like, eh, right? But then there's other times when you go and take a look at work, and it's something about it tugs at you, whether it is the artist statement, whether it is the way that the image is framed or presented, whether it is something inherent in the image, in the small details around the margins that you can see that pull you back in. To me, a successful image is one that I can look at all the time and find something new. I love images that disturb me a little bit, or that give me pause, or that make me work harder to understand what it is that they're trying to say. When we look at Phil Toledano's work, it's completely fanciful. You know that this was completely generated, yet the quality of the digital image itself is phenomenal, and it's something that is like a beautiful piece of candy that you want to hang on to and hold. And I found that Phil's work was the complete antidote to Rashed's work or to Josh's work, where we take AI so seriously, and here's someone that's using it as a tool to create something that you can either go off into oblivion of, oh my God, Armageddon, or you can, think about the Macy's Day Parade. It leaves that the resolution open for you for complete interpretation. So then what are we looking at in the future? As I have been saying this whole time, essentially, I look at everything. I think that contemporary photography or just photography in general, is at a high point in creativity, in that we have so many tools available to us. The way that we can now, I honestly take film. I don't have a digital camera. I only have a twin lens Rolleiflex that I love. And I have 100 rolls of expired film in my fridge, which is probably not where I should be storing it, but it is right now where it lives. It's been x-rayed so many times. I'm not even sure if it's functional, but I do know that Photoshop can clean that up for me so that I never lose an image, or that something might be really interesting. And I would love to see what happens. Someday when I get some time off, I'm going to go shoot with that Rollie. I keep looking forward to it. But when I think about the types of photography that we're all looking at, our lives are chaotic. I don't know anyone that has a calm or a stillness in their life on a daily basis. So to me, what I hear everyone is looking at, including me, is something that'll bring us a sense of stillness, maybe a sense of quiet. I've got 3 images here. Like I said, the glass house from Jill Enfield, which is a tactile, certainly an object, something that we can walk into and experience. Stephanie Shee's work. Stephanie is an Asian American photographer based in Los Angeles. She creates these unbelievable still lifes. I think when she was talking about them, they're feet by feet, because she's incorporating local ingredients from her Koreatown neighborhood, which you can see in there. This one happens to be filled with donuts. And then the nuclear family work, we're exploring LGBTQIA conversations about how we hold on to our history, how we hold on to our family, how we see representation moving forward. I think in this important time, I feel like portraiture, as Dana was talking about earlier, something that we can resonate with. I wonder if COVID in many ways changed how, not only who we are, but how we see the world. And I think that photography really reflects that in how we see the world, how we as photographers or creatives capture the world or show the world around us. So what are we looking at? I want to just say everything. Okay, so one of the great exhibitions that we've done in the past, Lou Jones, who you know is a New England based photographer, had a creative series called Distressed Memories. He wrote down his nightmares and then he created them. He would set up his studio to re-photograph these ideas and these things that happened to him in dreams. Another way, and I believe that they're all silver prints as well. So here is my bit. on on where we're going, what we're doing. I really believe that it is the past, present, and the future. I believe that all of us are committed, especially everybody on this Zoom, as a lover of the craft, as a believer in photography as a noun and as a verb. We have a responsibility to make sure that this craft continues to grow, change, evolve, and that we do leave a legacy behind. Whether you're a curator or a collector or an object hunter, like finding the perfect camera. I think that we all have a legacy to leave behind. And it's our responsibility to document the world around us, whether that's real or imagined. So with that, I will hang up my screen share and hopefully y'all have questions for me. Or did I not cover anything at all and you have other questions?
There are some comments in the chat. Kay said we could erase history literally with Photoshop. We don't need AI to do it. And Audrey says what was interesting about Lou Jones's show was that we could use QR codes for one of the first times.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, the whole thing about AI and portraiture is that so many young women will not let themselves be represented without a filter now. Like the way that people want to be seen on places like Instagram is altered, is not themselves. And it's sort of jarring in a way because everybody starts to look the same, you know.
TikTok. Who else is obsessed by TikTok? Is it me? I love TikTok. If you want to see creativity in videos or in single images, people do slideshows. I'm fascinated, honestly, with museums that are using TikTok to have conversations, curators walking through exhibitions. You learn so much about the objects or the ideas that go into what gets up onto a wall. That I spend more time than I should, certainly scrolling. I get to that 45-minute mark where they say, "Shouldn't you be sleeping?" I said, "Yes." Yeah, you should. Brad.
Oh, go ahead. There was a comment from Ping. Please say more about how we are seeing differently since COVID.
So I feel like we shifted as I mean, COVID hit everybody very differently. I myself had just driven 3,000 miles to take a job at the Griffin Museum the week before we shut down. My entire family was on the West Coast. Everybody was in California. I was here in a tiny apartment in Lynn, wondering what was going to happen next. And the one thing that I had was my job. So I either spent time in my apartment or at the museum. And I learned a lot about the museum in that time. But everyone has a story, right? Everybody has seen it differently. When we first started talking about COVID in a way that was trying to be uplifting, we found Zoom, right out of the gate. We did probably I know that at the Griffin, we were online Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays every week for almost a year. We did so much programming. We did our first photo book month online. We did 19 Zooms in 7 days. Trust me, I needed my rest and my Wheaties after that. But I think that one of the big things is that everybody's story was different. Some people focused on masks. Some people focused on environment. Some people wanted to be more connected to their family or find new ways of connecting to family. I wasn't a big person on connecting via Zoom to my folks out in California. It just felt weird. You know, I almost felt more remote rather than closer. But in situations like this, I love seeing all of you. This is amazing to me, right? That we can have these conversations. And this all came out of COVID. So I feel like how we view the world changed. And that as photographers and as we look at images, how we see them changed. Our expectations of what we want out of a photograph changed. But maybe that's just me. Does that answer the question? I hope. Very long-winded.
Bradley had their hand up. Bradley?
Yeah, so can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So not to drag AI back into it, but one of the things that concerns me is about copyright infringement. So, in the past, it's very easy if somebody is screen scraping or grabbing an image off of somebody's website or scanning somebody's work, you could tie it back to the original, author or photographer, and, it's copyright infringement. But, if you've got an AI image that is scraped, via an algorithm off of, multiple screens, multiple pages, it's a lot more complex. But yet, a lot of people's, original work is become part of, through a culmination of all these images. So that there's legal things, and again, it's a whole separate topic, but that's a concern of mine. And again, Photoshop, Lightroom, it's been around a while. There's things you could clip out of a picture, things you can put into a picture. You're manipulating images digitally. That's one thing, but I have concerns and reservations about, how this can be enforced if someone's images if it's proven that someone's images are stolen.
Well, there was a case with Richard Prince, if I'm not mistaken, about him pulling images from Instagram and redoing the captions and marking them as his own. I think that it happens with physical objects as well. I was connected to a photo festival in China well over a decade ago in a small town called Lishui, and the photographers that I worked with were told to leave their prints behind so that they could hang in an institution. But there was no contract, there was no information, there was no anything. And so all of a sudden, these photographers are seeing their work on scarves and notebooks and, in ads and things. And so because there was no contract, because there was only the trust between the curator who said, oh, go ahead and leave it behind, and the artist who wanted to be shown, right? There's nowhere to go from there. I think sadly, that's always going to happen. I don't know that there's going to be any foolproof way to ever lock down an image. When I was a gallerist, I had a collector who would scrape images off the internet and create a slideshow for themselves. And they'd live with that slideshow for 3 to 6 months because that was how they were going to determine which images they were going to purchase. And then they would contact me and they'd say, okay, I want this one, and this one. But in that interim, it's possible that that image would have sold out already. So he just lived with it as a screensaver. So, I don't know that we're ever going to be able to get around it. There's always going to be a loophole somewhere. There's always going to be somebody who says, oh no, the person that's holding this finger up is actually holding this finger up, and therefore it's mine. So, I'm not sure how to get around that one.
Yeah, you can.
I mean, we didn't even get into NFTs, and I won't, because that's a whole nother contemporary platform for photographs that I won't talk about tonight. That's a whole nother legal mess.
Krista, do you
Yeah.
find that in response to AI, we're seeing kind of this retro analog movement? Because I'm seeing a lot of that on Instagram, actually.
Well, what I'm seeing is a younger generation figure out what film cameras look like. They're tired of taking photos on their phones, right? So they're going out and they're buying film cameras. You can't go to a camera store anymore and find a really good used 35 because the younger generation, the 30 somethings, want the look of film without putting a filter on it necessarily, right? So they're learning how to use film. They're looking towards alternative process, the easy stuff, cyanotypes, anthrotypes, tintypes, right? I mean, again, the objectness of a photograph, because I think that 28 to 40 generation, right, has spent all of their time online, right? They've spent all of their time on phones, on video screens. My brother had 3 kids, and he plunked them down in front of a video monitor when they were driving. So, like, I don't understand that personally, because I don't know about you, but when I was in the back of the station wagon, I better have something to say about what was happening outside. But I'm a lot older, and I didn't have kids that I needed to plunk down in front of a video monitor. But I digress. So I think that everybody is just looking at the craft and finding new ways to express themselves. I don't know that AI necessarily is pushing that charge.
We are we have some more comments and questions in the chat, and I wanted just to take a quick peek at those before we
Yeah.
close tonight. There was a
There's one.
conversation from Kay, between Kay and Eric, about online shows versus physical gallery shows. Did you see those comments?
I did just see that, and I'm gonna slide right in the middle of that. The number of people that come to the museum on a daily basis or monthly basis is infinitely smaller than the number of people that visit our website every day. So having an online exhibition, to me, while it is not the object, if you want to have a conversation about your work, if you have a story that you want to tell, having an online exhibition actually puts you in front of more people than you would see were you to be hanging in a gallery. Like I said at the beginning, I can't get on a plane every couple of minutes as much as I would love to go all over the country to see the exhibitions and to hear the stories and see the images that I want to see. So having that opportunity to have an online gallery space, I think gives you the ability to hit the world as opposed to just say New England. And I do understand the object, and I love the physical print. There's nothing like it. And I have had decades of conversations now that I've been doing this for 25-ish years. So I know I haven't been doing it for very long, but at the same time, I got very heated with some bloggers way back in the day because they were talking about the fact that we didn't need a print anymore. And this was the early 2000s. And I'm like, what do you mean we don't need a print? And a friend of mine who's a PhD turns and says to this person, well, what's the last great image that you saw? And the response was, well, I was at this museum and I saw this amazing Paul Taylor print on the wall. And we were like, you just answered your own question, right? So there's nothing, there's no way to get around that. But I do believe that in the internet age, having an online exhibition cannot do you harm on any level. And like our Lafayette space, I'll digress a little bit more. So our Lafayette City Center place exhibition space gets hundreds of people a day through that hallway. Infinitely more than the museum, but it is not sexy. It is a hallway between a Macy's and a Hyatt. But if you want to be seen by the global public, that's a great place to have to have that visual conversation. When I'm down there installing the shows, there are so many people that engage with the photographs that thank us for putting those photographs in the hallway. Like they love whenever they see the walls are bare, they're like, wait, when is it coming back? And I'm like, now, it's coming back now. It's in my car. So, it's just a matter of how we want to take in images, and again, whether it's physical or not. The idea is to see and experience the work.
Thank you. We're getting towards the end of the evening. Are there any one last question, Eric?
Well, I just want to, I guess, respond to, I am definitely not opposed to things like Instagram and online galleries. I think, with all those things, you do reach such a larger audience, but that can't be your only way of looking at photos.
Mhm.
There is so much going on right around us. The Bridge Gallery in Cambridge, the Lesley University College of Art and Design, Mass Art, the Griffin. There were so many places that you should just physically get up and go look at work, and keep exposing yourself to all the things that you can see here in China and in Europe and anywhere else. So I am not like stuck in the mud that the only way to see work is in a physical gallery. But like Tony Attardo said, you get into a gallery and you're standing there with 20 other people, and you're seeing the whole thing, what the curators did about sequencing the work. You don't get that when you look at one image at a time on a screen. You get it, you get into dialogue, you get into reactions. What did you like about this one? What did you like about that one? It's just don't be stuck to thinking that that's the only place to see things is online. Get out and see work. It's a whole different experience. Get to openings, find out what's happening at your public library. All these places do work and have spaces to display it, and it'll inspire you immensely to go out and see work.
Noun and a verb, kids. It's what we see and what we do. So.
Right on. Before we close, I have one question, Krista. What is on the wall behind you? What's that photo in the frame behind you?
This one back here.
Yes.
Is a William Current. It's a picture of a castle house in Canyon de Chelly. I feel like the Southwest is my home after being a park ranger at Bryce Canyon National Park. I spent a lot of time out in the desert, and that's where I feel most at home. William Current is a photographer that was based in Los Angeles, married to Karen Sinsheimer, the great curator of Santa Barbara Museum of Art. And she left that to me when she passed away in 2015. And then on this side over here, the painting, my aunt was a painter, and it's her first painting from a class at BU back in the 50s, I think, 40s, late 40s, early 50s. So I carry that around with me everywhere as well.
Yeah, we have our own gallery spaces. So I really can't thank you enough. If everybody would like to unmute and give Krista a round of applause.
Thank you all so much for putting up with me for this last hour. I really appreciate it. I hope I gave something of an interesting conversation, or if you found something new in this conversation. And if you didn't, let me put my email in the chat. So if you want to connect with me, I'm pretty sure most of you know how to get a hold of me. I live at the Griffin most days, but just in case I'm hiding upstairs, this is an email that you can reach me at. Questions, comments, concerns, observations on life. I take it all. I'm awful at email and communication, but I swear I read it all, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. And it's
great.
one of those things, I prefer that face-to-face communication, oddly, which is why my email suffers. So.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Krista.
Thanks, everybody.
Krista, thank you very much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So much.
Good job.
That's great.
Also, check out the artist talks at the Griffin. There are people that you can engage with online if you can't make it to the gallery.
And speaking of which, we have the last week of winter solstice. We extended it a week, so it's up until the 12th. And then we open our new exhibition on the 17th. We've got a series of art talks and panel discussions around that. And we're showcasing a movie as well. So join us into the future. NEPR will be coming up this spring, and we're going to do another photo book month of photo book conversations coming up in April. So we hope to see everybody there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great conversation. Thank you for being here. And I hope a lot of us can get up there. Maybe we'll do a field trip to the Griffin over the summer. Thanks again, everyone, for being here, and thank you for participating in the conversation. In February, on the 2nd, Barbara Bosworth, who is a large format photographer from Massachusetts, will be our speaker. So I hope you can join us then. And don't forget that we have Photographica coming up in April. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good.